After a month of silence, Jon returned, not with an apology or even a simple, "How are you?" but with a divorce lawyer's business card. Divorcing a wife who doesn't work? Just pay me $1,000 a month in alimony. Sounds fair, take care. He chuckled as he said it, smug and unconcerned. Standing beside him, Emily wrapped her arm around his, mirroring his expression with a self-satisfied smirk. "Fine, let's divorce then," I replied. My casual tone must have caught Jon off guard because his smile wavered for a moment, but then, as if reassured by Emily's presence, he quickly regained his composure. Jon was never much of a thinker, something that would make my next steps all the easier. Once the divorce was finalized, I set my revenge plan into motion. I would make them regret everything. My tears were long dried. Now, I wanted to see theirs. My name is Sarah Wolf. I'm a 47-year-old illustrator and children's book author. Drawing has always been my passion. Jon and Emily were my childhood friends. We grew up together, and Jon became my husband, but the betrayal that unfolded between them turned my life upside down. Jon first asked me out when we were heading to different colleges. I was surprised. I had always thought he liked Emily, but I had secretly loved him too. So after some thought and consulting Emily, I accepted his confession. Emily had always been complicated. Even as a teenager, she had a habit of stealing boyfriends, only to discard them once they became too attached. Her parents worried about her behavior, so Jon and I often looked after her, trying to keep her grounded. Jon and I married when we were 25, and 4 years later, Emily introduced us to her fiancé, George, a successful professional working at a top-tier company. "Nice to meet you, Sarah and Jon. I've heard so much about you. Looking forward to our future together." George was polite and easygoing. We all got along well, often spending holidays and vacations together, enjoying trips and long train rides filled with laughter and drinks. But 2 years into Emily's marriage, things began to unravel. She announced her pregnancy, and from that moment on, Jon changed. Jon and I had decided early on that we wouldn't have children. We both loved kids, but enjoyed our freedom. Yet, as soon as Emily became pregnant, Jon's priorities shifted. He quit smoking because Emily couldn't stand the smell. He used his vacation days to drive her to doctor's appointments. I warned him, "George might not appreciate you always being with Emily." Jon snapped back, "You're heartless. She's our childhood friend, and she needs support. You're busy with work anyway." I help in my own ways, buying things, checking in, but going to the obstetrician with her is crossing the line. Jon scowled at me. "Emily is anxious. She asked me to go. What's the problem?" "The problem is that if she's anxious, George should be the one supporting her, not you. You're acting like you're the father of that baby. Jealous? You're not getting pregnant anyway, so what does it matter?" That was the beginning of our fights. We had rarely argued before, but now, tension was constant. Even after Emily gave birth to a baby girl, Emma, things only got worse. Jon became even more involved in Emily's life. Then, when Emma was 6, something happened that shattered the last remnants of my patience. The night before Emma's kindergarten graduation, Jon rummaged through his closet. "What are you doing?" "I have a meeting tomorrow," I asked, eyeing the suits strewn across the bed. "Trying to decide what to wear for the graduation ceremony." I froze. "You're going?" "Yeah, George can't make it. Emily asked me to attend." "That's absurd. You're not her father." Jon's face darkened. "What, you still doubt me and Emily? Can't you be supportive?" "I'm disappointed in you." "That's not the point. I'm going tomorrow. Iron my shirt properly." And just like that, the conversation ended. He left me standing there, boiling with rage. I called Emily immediately. "Emily, about tomorrow." "Oh, sorry, I'm borrowing Jon for the day." "But won't George be upset?" "Sarah, what are you talking about? George doesn't even know the graduation is tomorrow. I'll tell him after it's over." My blood ran cold. George didn't even know? How many other events had she hidden from him? "Emily, this is beyond unreasonable. Sarah, you're scary. Anyway, see you later." She hung up. I was livid, but in the end, I still ironed Jon's shirt. The next morning, I watched him leave for a graduation that wasn't his to attend. From then on, Emily and Jon spent more and more time together. Once a month turned into once a week, then 3 times a week. Even George, ever patient, began to suspect something. One night, while Jon and Emily were out, George knocked on my door. "Sorry for coming by so late," he said, his expression grave, "but there's something I need to show you." He handed me his phone. On the screen was GPS data from a tracker he had installed in Emily's car. She had been staying at a hotel 3 times a week, on the exact night she went out with Jon. I met George's eyes. No words were needed, we both knew what this meant. "What do you want to do?" I asked. "I want to take revenge." "Me too. I can't forgive them for betraying us." That night, we made a pact. A plan began to take shape. The first step? Strengthening my independence. For years, I had focused on our home, supporting Jon, and even helping with Emma, but now, my priorities had changed. It was time to take my life back, and destroy theirs in the process. My income had taken a sharp downturn. George had started working from home, and whenever Emily and Jon went out, he would bring Emma to my house. Together, we cared for her, all while gathering undeniable evidence of their affair. Neither Emily nor Jon suspected that we knew, which made it all the easier to build our case against them. When we finally had enough proof and were prepared to strike, an unexpected revelation about Emma stopped us in our tracks. After much deliberation, George and I agreed we wouldn't let our revenge hurt an innocent child. Instead, we decided to wait until she was an adult. But life had other plans. Just as I resolved to endure for 10 more years, I was diagnosed with a serious illness. Long-term hospitalization was inevitable, and even in the best-case scenario, I wouldn't be discharged for at least 2 years. While I could still work remotely, my income would suffer. I confided in George first, then reluctantly informed Jon. His reaction? Indifference. "I'll visit you once in a while," he said, as if we were making idle small talk. Not once did he ask about my condition or even the name of my illness. True to form, his visits became infrequent, once a month, sometimes once every 2. Then, after Emma's 15th birthday, something changed. She had visited me almost daily at the hospital, but suddenly, she became distant. When we asked her about it, she simply said, "Don't worry about it." George and I were baffled, but the answer eventually came from Jon, of all people. "Hey, it's been a while," he said casually one day, striding into my hospital room without knocking. Jon had changed. His once plain appearance was now flashy, almost gaudy, and he wasn't alone. Emily clung to his arm, wearing a smirk that matched his own. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't even pretend to care. Instead, he tossed a business card onto my bed. "Divorce lawyer," he said, grinning ear to ear. "We're splitting up. You're not working, so pay me $1,000 a month in alimony. That's the deal. Take care." Emily snickered beside him, her arms tightening around Jon's. I didn't react the way he expected. "Fine, let's divorce," I said lightly. Jon blinked, surprised for a moment, but then exchanged amused glances with Emily. He had no idea he was playing right into my hands. The moment our divorce was finalized, I put my revenge into motion. First, I called George and arranged a hospital transfer. Then, I instructed my lawyer to handle all communication with Jon going forward. At the same time, George moved closer to my new hospital with Emma, visiting me frequently. She still seemed withdrawn, but I was grateful to see her every day. As for my old home, I told Jon to get rid of anything I'd left behind. I wanted nothing that had been tainted by him or Emily. Then came Jon's meltdown. One day, after stepping away from my phone for a few minutes, I returned to find 30 missed calls from him. Annoyed, I picked up. "What? What the hell is going on?" Jon's panicked voice blared through the phone, accompanied by the frantic murmur of a real estate agent in the background. Emily's shrill yelling only added to the chaos. "What do you mean?" I asked, feigning innocence. "The house. Why do we have to move out?" I chuckled. "Because it's my house." Jon had conveniently forgotten that the apartment we lived in had always been mine. I had rented it as a workspace when I started freelancing, and since Jon couldn't afford to live on his own, he had simply moved in with me. He had never paid rent, never covered utilities. And now, he had nowhere to go. The lease had already been cancelled the day after I filed for divorce. The real estate agent had been informed, but Jon, in his arrogance, had ignored the warnings. With George and Emma gone and the apartment sold, Jon was left scrambling. "What are we supposed to do now?" "I don't know," I said, barely suppressing a smile. "Maybe stay in a business hotel for now." Jon erupted, "Don't screw with me," but then, as if remembering something, he changed tactics. His voice softened. "Well, whatever. When will you transfer the money? We're running low on cash." I tilted my head. "What money?" Jon scoffed. "Don't mess around. I told you, $11,000 a month." Oh, I don't recall agreeing to that. Silence. Then came the incoherent shouting. Apparently, Jon had been banking on my financial support and had already started spending recklessly. Even if he had $11,000 in savings, how did he expect to survive beyond that? Hey, say something. There's nothing to discuss, I said brightly. We're strangers now, remember? If you need anything, talk to my lawyer. Jon sputtered. Lawyer? Wait a minute. I hung up. He called back several more times, but I ignored him. When my lawyer reached out, Jon, in true childish fashion, refused to answer. He was always selfish, but I never expected him to be this reckless. I sighed. It didn't matter anymore. Months later, after a temporary discharge from the hospital, I paid a visit to Jon's parents' house. Jon and Emily were there, sitting stiffly, their bravado completely gone. They looked small, timid even. Jon glared at me. Bringing my parents into this is a low blow. I smiled sweetly. Oh, I just let them know we got divorced. His father's disapproving glare shut him up instantly. The truth was, I had always gotten along well with my in-laws. Even when Jon wasn't around, I would visit them, share meals, and enjoy their company. They had treated me like family. So, of course, I felt it was only right to let them know exactly why their son had thrown his marriage away. And judging by the looks on Jon and Emily's faces, I had made my point. So, I went to see them. Is it true that you're remarrying Emily? Yes, Jon replied without hesitation. Emily, Emma, and I are going to start over as a family. I stared at him in disbelief. What are you talking about? Your only family is Sarah. She's not my family anymore. Jon's father frowned, his expression unreadable but exasperated, as if saying, give me a break. Jon simply shook his head and slid a piece of paper across the table. It's the hotel bill from our stay. He acted as if this explained everything, then, suddenly, he collapsed. What the hell? His mother gasped, struggling to breathe. She looked at Jon, horror-stricken. Beside him, Emily wore the same stunned expression. Why are you so upset? Jon asked, his tone casual, almost amused. The family's just changing because I'm getting married. Besides, you'll have a grandchild, a blood-related one at that. Isn't that something to celebrate? Emily, completely unfazed, looked at me with a blank stare. Her lack of remorse sent a chill down my spine. Then, a voice broke the silence. Enough already, this is disgusting. Emma, who had been idly scrolling through her phone in the corner, finally spoke. She didn't even look up. The room fell still. My dad is the only father I'll ever recognize, whether we're related by blood or not, she said flatly. Jon, you always went to my school events, right? But you only went because Emily made sure Dad never got the invitations. I heard everything from him, how he only found out about events after they were over, how, eventually, you stopped telling him anything at all. Emma lifted her gaze and met Emily's eyes, cold and unwavering. But no matter what you did, Dad always said I was his daughter, and because of that, I will never be yours. She walked over and sat beside me, her expression softening. You know, she murmured, when I found out about all this, I thought you'd hate me, but Dad told me that wasn't true. That's why I came here today. Emma. Tears welled in her eyes as she hugged me tightly. I love you so much, she whispered. You were always there for me when I was in the hospital. You made me so happy. Sarah. Seeing her so relieved, my heart ached. I know Emma is the child of an affair, I said softly, but I've raised her for 15 years. Do you really think I wouldn't love her? Emily flinched. She had expected anger, but not this. Before she could speak, another voice cut in. We knew from the start, 10 years ago. George had arrived. Emily paled. Of course we knew, he continued. You were the one who demanded a divorce out of nowhere, claiming irreconcilable differences. It was a shock, sure, but you never even finalized the divorce, did you? Jon stiffened. Oh, George added, smirking, and by the way, you're not divorced yet. The papers? Still sitting right here. You never checked, did you? Not surprising. Emily and Jon never cared about the details, but Emily, for all your scheming, you should have at least noticed the 100-day waiting period for women to remarry. Guess what? You never waited. A deep silence filled the room. So legally speaking, George said, turning to me, Emily is still my wife, and Emma is still my daughter. But that's not how custody works, Jon protested. Emma will obviously want to live with us. Emily turned to Emma, trying to mask her unease. You do want to stay with us, right? Emma frowned and squeezed my hand. No, she said simply. Emily's face twisted in fury, but Jon suddenly let out a bitter laugh. Oh, I see what's going on, he sneered. You two are together, aren't you? I raised an eyebrow. What? But too bad, he went on. You can't live off George's salary alone, can you? George rolled his eyes. Can you stop making weird assumptions? Besides, Jon smirked, it's not like you can work with your illness, you'll just. I cut him off with a laugh. Jon froze. He wasn't expecting that. You really don't know anything, do you? I said, shaking my head. Huh? You think I'm struggling financially? I took out my phone and held up the screen. Jon and Emily leaned in, and their faces drained of color. $500,000 a year? Jon gasped. Emily was speechless. Over the past decade, my picture books had made me a best-selling author. Essays, interviews, royalties, all of it had built up. And now, with an upcoming film adaptation, my income was skyrocketing. Jon swallowed hard. Liar. You can check for yourself. Emily's hands trembled as she stared at the screen. Then, in an instant, Jon's tone shifted. Sarah, let's make up, huh? What? Emily's face turned red with rage. Jon, you. I sighed. If you two want to get married, go ahead, but I will be taking compensation for damages. Sarah, wait. I ignored him, taking Emma's hand. I turned to my in-laws, thanked them, and left. Jon lost his job shortly after. My father-in-law fired him when he discovered Jon had been skipping work while pretending to go on sales trips. To teach him a lesson, he arranged for Jon to work on a fishing boat. Jon, who had always preferred a cushy office life, was miserable. He called me several times, begging for help. I forwarded every message to my father-in-law. Eventually, the calls stopped. Emily didn't fare much better. She lost custody of Emma in the divorce. With no interest in a broke, disgraced Jon, she abandoned him. Disowned by her own family, she moved into a rundown apartment. Having never worked a day in her life, she struggled to hold down jobs, but she had to, between living expenses and child support. She barely scraped by. Meanwhile, Emma threw herself into her studies, determined to go abroad for university. She worked hard every day, hoping to translate my books for children around the world. That dream made me proud beyond words. As for me, my books continued to thrive. With growing demand for animated adaptations and merchandise, my success only grew. My illness was also improving, though I was still hospitalized. My doctor recently told me that I might be discharged next year. And one more thing, George and Emma visited me every day. One day, George confessed he wanted to remarry. I haven't given him an answer yet. But when I think of the future, when I picture a life together, filled with love and warmth, I can't help but smile. For now, I continue writing, weaving stories of happiness, and today, like always, I dream of a bright tomorrow.